This is an oyster shell abandoned in a city puddle. Centuries ago, the New York harbor was home to billions of eastern oysters, their reefs stretching for miles. For the Lenape people, these oysters were a vital resource, harvested sustainably for food and trade. But with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, new technologies enabled overharvesting. Surplus oyster shells paved the streets and filled the docks, while the reefs beneath the water were stripped bare. Today, scientists and volunteers are working to revive these keystone creatures, one shell at a time. In doing so, they're not just restoring the oysters, they're helping to clean our waters and bring life back to the harbor.
Their goal is to get 1 billion oysters back into the harbor by 2035. They're on track to doing that. A single oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water per day. About a quarter of the world's oysters used to be in this harbor. The reefs were so high that they would actually peek out of the harbor, and waves and ships would have to go in between them. Flash forward to now, industrialization really wrecked the oyster population in this area, and there was just vastly unsafe practices with the oyster population, throughout the 1800s and 1700s before that too. And so our harbor now is in dire need of some filtration, and so this Billion Oyster Project, the Billion Oyster Project, is their goal is to get that in check.
By two, like we normally do, and we have more pallets here that we can all put over. I think it might be nice to start stacking also more on the back of the pile.
The way that they do that is not just through putting oysters back into the harbor, and they also have a team of lawyers in order to create protective spaces in the harbor. But they also team up with our high school on the island, the New York Harbor School. A big element of their mission is to teach the next generation about harbor health and how to and advocacy for our waterfronts around the world. And so that's another large portion of it. Yeah.
You ever know that the island was only up to here?
Oh yeah.
This did not exist over here.
Oh. Was it because of the oyster?
No, it has nothing to do with the island. Because of here is the island. That's the shape of the island originally.
Oh wow.
So if you look here, this is the Castle William. This is here. Wow. We're over here. So this is Castle William. This is the bottom of it.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. So that did not exist.
Or so did people pour sand to this part, and that's how it...
So they were during the between 1900 and 1912, when they were excavating the Lexington Avenue 456 subway line, so the Green Line. Yeah. They took all that bedrock that they excavated and dumped it here as on purpose to expand the island by over 100 acres. And that was when it was a military base. Military famously has a large budget, so it was part of an expansion that was funded by them.
Hi, Julian. Hey, how are you? I love your boots. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, those are great.
It will be, at that point, it's called fat, and then this is the fat one go. Okay. So then this little guy then grows and grows and grows. Yeah, and it's just a whole new oyster here, and this is just what it's rooted from.
Oysters are filter feeders. They draw in surrounding water and pass it over their gills. These gills are covered in tiny hair-like structures called cilia, which grab onto any potential food. The edible particles, like plankton, are consumed, while waste particles are released, becoming biodeposits that settle down on the ocean floor. Through this process, oysters remove excess organic matter from the coastal ecosystem, helping to prevent algal blooms and dead zones. Eastern oysters are known for forming dense reef structures, which create safe habitats for countless marine life. These reef structures also stabilize the seabed and reduce erosion by softening wave energy. In turn, oysters depend on healthy brackish water and stable sediment conditions to thrive. This mutual exchange between the oyster and its environment reflects a complex web of interdependence, where the oyster both shapes and is shaped by the coastal ecosystem it inhabits.
So, this oyster shell here, it all comes from like New York City restaurants, okay? So when you go to a restaurant and you eat an oyster, basically what you're doing is you leave the shells behind and they collect those. Instead of putting them in the trash, they divert it, we collect it, and then it gets brought here. So it can even take you over there. It gets dumped here at the shell pile. And you'll notice when you get over here, it gets kind of like stinkier, right? And like kind of like dirty. There's like flies and stuff on it and everything. Yeah. So this is basically like our fresh stuff that just came from the restaurants and just got dumped here. And what we're doing here with our volunteers, this is basically where we like clean and process the shell. So you'll notice that this pile is kind of bigger and this one's smaller. This is the newer stuff, this is the older stuff. If you go over there, it's like less stinky, less dirty, kind of stinky and dirty over here. This is because this stuff still needs to just cure, which is like sitting here and being kind of exposed to the elements over the course of about a year. And then we're just kind of intermittently kind of turning over the pile to allow it to all get exposed. So that's like the wind hitting it, the rain washing it, the sun bleaching it, little like critters eating away at that like leftover flesh. You see the bugs and stuff, and getting that off of there. And then yeah, over the course of a year, it slowly gets naturally cleaned, and then we then enlist our volunteers to kind of fine tune clean it. So that's what we're doing right here. We're basically just taking the stuff that has been cured, and we are manually cleaning it with water to get it nice and ready to be seeded with oyster larvae. Okay. And that happens at our nursery, which used to be in Red Hook, but now is happening on Governor's Island too. Like, oh, like back in the day, you know, like people would be eating oysters at like shucking carts in the city, like as a hot dog stand, you know. And now it's like we're kind of like returning it back to that, which is sweet. But yeah, that's kind of that. I guess after it gets cleaned, we take the clean shell. See how there's like stacks of cleaned shell that are bridled up and tied up? We take those stacks to our nursery, and our nursery is like, it sounds like a scientific situation, but it's really like shipping containers that are filled with water from the harbor. And then we place those bridled stacks of clean shell substrate into there, and then we release oyster larvae. It's like baby oysters. Oh, okay. Yeah. And so we want those just to attach on to oyster shells. What we're doing is we're not like, let me show you a little bit of what we're doing. We're not like taking these shells and like growing a new oyster out of it. We're literally just taking like this shell, and then the oyster larvae lands on it, and this is just a rooting spot. And then an entirely new oyster will grow off of that. Oh, okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is not really gonna be another oyster, but it is gonna be a spot that's like advantageous for another oyster to grow onto. An oyster could grow like on concrete or on like a rock, any like hard surface, but it does have a bit of like an inclination towards this, just because like obviously if oysters are growing in a population, they grow in reefs is the name of the structure that it is. They grow on top of each other. It's got like some nice complex geometry. It kind of grows out. But then it's like if you have a bunch of them all in a population together, they can reproduce more effectively, and just have like a better chance of survival. So yeah, it has that inclination. Also, I believe it can draw from this and use some of that calcium carbonate to build a new shell more easily, as far as I know. That's why when you look in here, you'll see like there's not just oysters. You have like scallop shells. This is like less good for us. This is a razor clam shell, and it's made up of like keratin, which is like, see how I can just break it? Like I can't do that with this. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
calcium carbonate. That's different. And then you'll also see like a normal clamshell. This is also made up of calcium carbonate, so that's good. And the last one that you'll really see around here, let's see if we can find it. It's like a butterfly.
Oh yeah.
There you go. But yeah, once again, very like fragile. You can break it. So we want to get these out of here as well. This is like debris for us. It's not actually debris, but like in terms of what we're trying to do, it's less useful.
Oh, it so does.
It's not oyster shell.
It's right here. Oh. Smells a little worse.
Yeah, it smells good.
It's beneficial for those restaurants because it's those restaurants, but like I mean, this is like they said restaurants have to pay by the pound for anything that they're throwing away right there. So is it like, and so us taking that oyster shell right there is it taking unnecessary weight from those restaurants right there. That what was it? And I think I'm pretty sure if it's not already done, they're working on making kind of like a tax exemption for those restaurants right there. So like by donating those shells to the Winners Project, it's kind of like, oh, you're donating to charity, therefore you get like a tax write-off or something along those lines. But definitely, like the main portion is taking these shells off of their hands is beneficial to them because then they have to they pay less money for the waste that they're they're having to that they have to pay for it to throw away. Yeah.
What would you say is like maybe the most difficult part of getting to the billion oyster project goal?
I would say, as far as I know, it's definitely kind of just like permitting right there, permitting with okay, what's allowed where right there. 'Cause I think people have desires for this to happen in like New Jersey and other areas right there, but New Jersey has their own permits right there. We have and then certain areas across like the 5 boroughs have like their own permits. So I think that like that's kind of like is a barrier for getting taken. I think also what we're really trying to address as well is CSOs or combined sewage outflow events right there. So that's just when like it rains heavy here, right? Then like sewage when it rains heavily here, the sewage system in the city right there becomes overwhelmed right there, and so I like think on a normal day it's all just net, like all the water that's being coming from houses and like streets, whereas the street where the runoff water, what is it, from streets is naturally going to a wastewater treatment plant, right, and then being reclaimed and all that. But once it rains, that kind of system is overwhelmed, and so that sewage water is getting pumped out into it's kind of like any kind of older area right there has like an older sewage system, and so that's just pumping sewage. And so like if you look, we have a water quality testing program, and so we'll see after it rains heavily in those specific areas right there, the water in that area will be like will have like bacteria levels of like that are just insane right there. It's just because a lot of fecal bacteria and waste that just enter the water right there. That harms animals. It definitely harms our oysters. And our oysters are a bit harder right there, and so they're not going to immediately die off just because. But it does kind of limit them from being like, I think if you just were to just leave an oyster in the water with ideal water quality conditions, they can live for 80 years. Because of much more pollution right there, was that kind of limits their lifespan right there and growth right there. And we are also trying to address, how to fix these old sewage systems right there and make it more better, I guess. What's the best way to say this? Is it more modernized, so it's not adding harmful pollutants to the water and things like that.
Yeah. You mentioned what are those called?
These are called reef balls.
Yeah.
So they essentially, some of them are made by another company and they're delivered here. But I think those ones you see kind of over there, right there, with that have like this kind of like specks in them right there. So those are made by volunteers. So they literally will bring out cement mixers out here right there, and so you'll be mixing like eco concrete, sand, silica, and pressed up oyster shell right there into into that mixer right there. There'll be a fiberglass mold you'll pour that mixture into, right? And then you'll be making a reef ball. So that mixture will dry for about a day, and then the next day the staff will take it off right there, and then there'll be a full reef ball right there. And then once that hardens enough right there, they'll be able to move it with that telehandler into on trucks right there, and then those trucks can then transport it to Pier 101 to then go into those harbor containers I was talking about earlier right there. So yeah, these ones right here, they don't have as much oyster shell in them right there, and so we're trying to get a feel for what works better right there. So if it's the ones that have a bottom to it but don't really have oysters in it right there, or if it's the ones that we make that don't have a bottom but are mixed in with like oyster shells in it, because oysters like to land on anything that's made up of primarily calcium carbonate. So that's oyster shells, clam shells, and scallop shells right there. They'll all be made of enough calcium carbonate right there for an oyster to want to land on. But that material, eco concrete, is also made up of a good amount of calcium carbonate as well. So it's kind of just a debate to see which works better right there, structurally wise.
Oysters are here. No, it's not. Okay.
Is it for the energy or is it because they